And you are watching SCW here on YouTube.com. That's if you are watching us. You can be listening to us as well on podcast form on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. Welcome to SCW. James and myself here going to be talking WWE for you for the next little bit. Going to be discussing the results of the Superstar Shake-Up, like how it sort of transpired over that first week with the movers and shakers, who's it worked out for, who hasn't it worked out for, and of course we're on the road now to Money in the Bank, of course one of the big pay-per-views of the year. We're going to be giving our thoughts of the match card so far. And of course, for those that want to know, yes, we are going to be talking about that Bray Wyatt visionette. That was going to be one of the first things we're going to be kicking off with very shortly. But first off, before we start, do subscribe to the channel. Please like and share as well. Spread the word with friends as well. Let them know about SCW. If you enjoy the product and if there's anything you want us to talk about in these videos or podcasts, just leave us a comment. You can get in touch, and I'll leave the stuff on the bottom of the screen if you're watching on YouTube of how you can get in touch. If you are not, you're listening to us and you want to know about YouTube, SCW The Wrestling Channel is the channel you want to search for. Subscribe to that and you can get all the contents of where you can find us on the multiple different platforms. But James, let's get started, shall we? First off, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you, Steve. You good?
Yeah, very well, thank you. And have you enjoyed, as summarised this week of WWE TV, how was RAW and SmackDown for you?
Yeah, I think it's actually been a good week for WWE. I think both shows have had a fresh feel about them, which is always good. You don't want to see the same things repeated week in, week out. So it's a fresh start, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, there has been quite a lot of fresh matchups. You could argue on SmackDown with Becky and Charlotte. That's a bit of a rerun. But for most of the two shows, I felt kind of freshened up with, and a lot of changes with some of the superstars as well. Like we said there, the Superstar Shake-Up has resulted in new people and new shows, which makes new matches, and also some changes in gimmicks, which for me has been quite exciting. We're going to touch on one very quickly, because we spoke about this probably last week's big news, was the Viking experience. This week, they are now the Viking Raiders. But if you've read reports, there is rumours going around, James, that they could be another name change for next week on Raw, that they could be from here forth known as the Viking Warriors. Now, I know which one is my favourite of the three. I'd like to get first up, before how ridiculous it is changing the names so often, which is your favourite of those three names?
I'd still go with Viking Raiders from this week's latest change. It was Viking Raiders this week, was it? I'm getting a bit lost with what it's been. But yeah, for me, I wasn't a fan of the Viking experience. I thought it was crazy. Although they're now using that as their finishing move name, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah, you can't keep changing them every week. And the funny thing is, on NXT, they're still being referred to as the War Raiders. So, you know, it's a bit of a mess. They should have stuck with this early on. They should have kind of worked this out sooner. You'd think with the planning that goes into WWE and what they do months in advance, you know, there is a goal that they're aiming probably to the next Mania. They've already got in mind plans loosely fitted around, but to be mucking around with the names of teams or wrestlers, thankfully the names of the individuals, although have already been changed once, they weren't changed again this week, which was a relief.
Thankfully for that as well. I mean, you are correct there. I mean, there are rumours going around that WWE claim that they are booking now ahead 1 year in advance. And there has been an organised feel a little bit about this week's Raw. It felt like that plans are in place. Feuds and rivalries have been made for Money in the Bank, and some matches have been made 4 weeks early, which makes you think, wow, they have a plan here and they're going through with it, which is really good. But like you say, there seems to be a lack of organisation with now the Viking Raiders. And like you say, NXT TV this week, the War Raiders still is the name. And ironically enough, they are still the NXT Tag Team Champions. They've not lost the belts, which means they're going to continue to be the War Raiders on NXT for further notice. If I had to give my personal impression, I do actually like the name of the Viking Warriors. I think that is kind of probably the best fitted name for them throughout the whole experience. But my only drawback with that, as I'm sure there was mentioned there, I mean, They were the War Raiders in NXT, and we've been fed this information for a year, getting used to this team that are going to be brought up to the main roster. Now, they did come up earlier than I expected. I didn't expect them on the Superstar Shake-Up, but I was very pleased that they did arrive. But I'm just a little bit worried that all these changes is going to harm their momentum and credibility with the fans, especially on like a mainstream product, because more eyes are on the main roster than they are the NXT roster. Would you feel the same?
Yeah, it doesn't help them out. You know, if you want to get over as a superstar individually or as a team, you know, you do need some sort of consistency. And although we've touched upon it before about how a lot of fans don't follow the NXT product, there's still a large majority that do. You know, you and I both follow NXT, so we know a lot of fans follow outside of WWE, and we all knew them as War Machine before they actually joined WWE. So when they came, I'm pretty sure when they were first spotted in the crowd, they were still called War Machine, and the kind of logo came up with War Machine, the NXT logo. So we all knew them coming into WWE as that way. They changed them up to the War Raiders, which I don't think people at the time were overly impressed with that as a name, but it got over eventually, and you associate that, and no doubt whatever they decide to go with on the main roster will get over eventually, but they can't keep chopping and changing it.
No, I agree. They must now. I think it's now or never. They must, whatever they come with now from this week's Raw onwards, they must stick with it. And hopefully, in one way, they stick with the Viking Raiders, because at least it keeps with the continuity of NXT. But I do like the name, the Viking Warriors. I would be okay with that. But like you say, Viking Experience is now the finishing move for these guys. Let's just hope. I mean, they have been booked strongly, at least. That's one thing we can say as a bonus. They have been going over so far. They've not been put to Ascension level yet, where they're being buried every week. So fingers crossed it will go well for the Vikings, I'm going to say for now, whatever they are this time next week. They might even be changed from that as well. We'll have to wait and see when we get to next week's show. But I think we need to discuss the big topic. It has been trending everywhere. And it's Bray Wyatt, of course. This was almost like a mixture. We've seen these videos each week. The first one was a buzzard in a box, which we wasn't overly a fan of at the time. Then we saw next week with like a doll house experience. Then we saw this this sort of doll in a rocking chair, looked a bit more freaky. This week we've seen more like almost like a children's show, but with a dark edge about it. And I'm going to be honest with it. I mean, when we first saw it, it was really presented like this is all for kids. And I unfortunately fell into the category of one of these people that just immediately saw the negatives in it, and I didn't see the positives. And I think there was a lot of bashing initially on Twitter about this segment. But I think a lot of people since, and you're one of the people that told me to rewatch this over again and really looking to find detail, that there is some genius about this. And I would like to get your thoughts on it, Jay, if we could just go into the cleverness of how this is done, because it seems to be what's presented as a children's product, but really has got some dark edges around it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, just touching upon what you said about people kind of slating it straight away, that was one of the first things I saw on Twitter, and I was very quick to tweet back to at least one, but I don't know whether it was no DQ, just asking for thoughts. And I said on that, I think we need to see where this goes before we start to judge it too quickly. I think we don't know how it's going to develop over the coming weeks, but from first view, I think it's, what I like about it is it's different. You know, Bray could have come back. He could have, you know, there were some rumours that he's going to come back with a new Wyatt family. I would have been in favour of that. But we talk about need for change, and the Wyatt family gimmick, although it started off strong with Bray, it never really got anywhere. Like, he held the WWE title, didn't he, for a short period? But even that wasn't that successful. I think he lost it in his first main defence against Randy Orton, I'm pretty sure. That was Mania, wasn't it, when he lost the belt back to Randy?
It was,
yes. But what I like about it is it's completely different. He's such a good character presenter. Like, he can put across this, you know, from what we knew him as that Bray Wyatt character, this is flipped on its head, and there's that there is that creepiness about it, and all the kind of as if his audience is there watching him, and it's a group of children. But what I liked about it was little side glances, as if he's trying to present himself as this really nice guy, and then he just had a little glance to his right, as if that old evil Bray Wyatt character is still trying to come out. And that's what I think there's going to be confliction, almost a bit schizo. It's going to be that two personalities trying to fight the other one to come out. I don't know if that's where it's going, but I've seen loads of rumours. I've seen some rumours that that potentially they think that the people that he's talking to, who are the Buzzard and this Doll, could be. Some people have said Nikki Cross as the Doll and Eric Young as the Buzzard, so they could be his new friends, and I get what you were saying about the kids kind of feel to it, especially with the little kind of intro and theme music to the show. But no, I think it's interesting. I think it's completely different. It's really split opinion, which is, that's what WWE wants to get people talking about it, and everyone is talking about Bray Wyatt.
Yeah, very true. And there's some great points that have been made there. And you say that people are talking, and I think that's something people don't do enough about the product. I mean, watching a lot of the rest of WWE TV this week, nothing's been as interesting. Nothing has made me want to go back and watch it again. And I've watched that Bray Wyatt video now probably, I want to say 3 times now, because I watched it a second time after you told me to watch it again, and I saw more of the genius in it the second time. By the third time on SmackDown Live, I got it. I felt like I understood what I was watching. Like you said, there is this kind of kids element to it, but it's very dark as well. And one thing that really needs to be given a shout out to is what is Bray Wyatt's acting. The acting in that promo is fantastic. Bray really must believe in this character, and there are rumours that there's a lot of reports out there of different things, whether this is going to be in favour, not in favour. Rumours that shareholders and stockholders were not in favour of this gimmick and want it pulled off TV immediately. It seems that it's going to be going ahead, though, because of the fact it was featured on SmackDown Live again. Bray really, for me, I don't know, he's changed his look. The whole thing for me just... there's a fresh feel about it. I love the fact as well that the Buzzard is called Mercy, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is a take of a character that is similar to Bray Wyatt, which is maybe inspiration from the mid-90s, which was Waylon Mercy. It, of course, wasn't so successful. But I have been watching him recently on the WWE Network, actually, under his gimmick in WCW, the NWA days. He was part of the Skyscrapers with Sid Vicious back in the old days. But going back onto Bray, it's hard to tell where this is going to go, and I think that's what makes it so compelling, because he could end up on Raw, he could end up on SmackDown, so even the ideas of Nikki Cross and Eric Young, if he goes on SmackDown, he doesn't go with either of them. And like you said, there could be a schizophrenia thing about this. There's lots of different directions that this can be taken. What I found very interesting as well was the chainsaw element as well, featured on a PG program. Was that a bit risky to be done, even though it was on a cardboard cutout?
I don't see it, but then I'm looking at it through an adult's eyes. Do you know what I mean? I don't see it and go, kids might look at that and think. Well, there was some tweets that, again, linked to that about, oh, my 3-year-old. I'm sure someone posted something about their 3-year-old loves chainsaws, and I think that was a bit of a dig. But I've got a near 2.5-year-old, and I won't let him watch it because of even though it's PG, I still think it's a bit too early for him to watch it. So if you've got a 3-year-old who's watching it, then that's your choice. You know what can still come out in wrestling these days, whether it's PG or not. So I don't see any issue with it personally.
No, and I like the idea of the direction that is a bit more risky because, like you say, despite the fact that WWE is perhaps a PG market and can go towards kids, they've got to do something that's got to keep the adults entertained as well. We can't just have the simple superhero story. We've got bored of that over the years. So this is something interesting. It is something different. You have swayed my opinion to watch it again, and I have a different opinion about it. And I don't know. I've been speaking to George as well this week. he's very, into the idea of this Bray Wyatt gimmick. He's hoping it's going to go to places as well. So, I mean, there is some optimism that comes with this through being a little bit different and a little bit out there. There are rumours going around that this has also been written by Hollywood writers, that they've put in a lot of time and a lot of effort to really try and make sure that this does come across authentic and to a point that it's going to connect with audience. And it feels on week 1 it's done it, and hopefully next week it's going to be just as capturing, hopefully, because it's really been something of interest this week, and it's got a lot of people talking. But it seems from you and me that this has got the thumbs up.
Yeah, definitely. And just on what you were there about Hollywood getting involved with it, even the production of it, just even the graphics coming up, and I know that it's probably not that difficult, but there is a feel to it where they have put a lot of effort into it, and like you said before, Bray seems well on board with it as well. He's taken the character in one showing of him so far in this role. I mean, I have seen there's been some pictures of him outside of wrestling recently. He's lost a hell of a lot of weight and toned himself up quite well. I mean, he's still a big guy, don't get me wrong, but he's physically he's looking very impressive at the moment, I think, as well. So I think we're going to see a completely different side to him now. I think it's good times for him.
Yeah, hopefully. Do you think that would make a difference to his in-ring work?
Not necessarily, because I think he was never kind of, although he's a bigger guy, he's never been slow. He's very his impact moves and things like that, he can just burst out of the turnbuckle, very quickly. I think that was one of the appealing things when he first came up to the main roster. He's a powerful guy, but he's still got speed, and he's a big guy, so he kind of ticked a lot of boxes. Don't think he was ever going to see him doing high flying moves up the top ropes, but this, I don't know, it just might could appeal to Vince a bit more, because Vince has always been a bit questionable on the bigger guys, and if he's lost a bit of weight and toned up a bit, it might be another kind of tick box for Vince.
Yeah, and of course we know if Vince likes it, it's going to go fast. So you're totally right with that. One more question about Bray, just before we move on. Also, one thing I noticed in the picture frame when you've watched this more than once is I noticed there's Sister Abigail is in the picture frame behind him. You see sort of near the beginning. Do we feel that character is long gone, or do we think that there could be more of an influence of a Sister Abigail, or maybe is this sort of witch proving to be the same thing? Is there more connections to this than meets the eye?
I don't necessarily think there's a connection, but I mean, he talks about the old Bray Wyatt, doesn't he? He talks about himself in past tense and how he used to be, and he doesn't want to be that loser or whatever he referred to himself as. So it's not like they've just cleared the memory of what we remember him as the Wyatt family leader and all this, and he's still called Bray Wyatt. So it's almost like he's a changed man, and so the history of him and the whole Sister Abigail stuff, and even follow the buzzards and all this. So you've still got the link because he's got a buzzard with him. So it's not completely dead in the water, and I think we'll see something. This is what I'm saying about the old Bray still being in the background, and the slight turns to him, and the bit where he's saying, "I used to be a bad person," and the scene that interested me the most was when he came up and he had his hands over his face, and he had was it hate and heal or something like that?
Yeah, those are the 2 words. Yeah.
And then it was all kind of, the screen was going a bit hazy, and almost as if like anger was building. And then all of a sudden he was up and he was smiling, and I thought that was amazing, because it showed that to me is showing that the old evil Bray Wyatt is still there, and I just think it's very clever booking, really.
It shows depth. There's layers into this. It's not just a simple character change, and this guy is now a good guy, or this guy is now a bad guy. There's something that seems to be going with it, and I agree with you. That was one of my favourite parts. In fact, you mentioned both of my favourite parts in that there, with the hands there, and also the I've been a bad man, or once was a bad man, and that's the way that those couple of bits were portrayed on television. They were absolutely brilliant, and I look forward to see where this goes next. But I agree with you. I currently feel this has a schizophrenic kind of feel about it going forward. There could be a 2 sides to Bray story here. I'd be interested to see where it's going to play out. I don't know yet if it will involve a family. It feels like maybe it might do with his friends along the way. Friends seems to be a key word used a lot there. So we'll have to wait and see how it's going to be brought out. But one thing I'm going to throw is now in each point with these, with the videos now when we're doing it for YouTube, is that if you have a comment based on Bray Wyatt and you have an opinion, please let us know your feelings in the comment section below. We'd be interested to know your thoughts with this new Bray Wyatt character. But another change of character, and this one not so mainstream, but certainly took me by surprise when I saw it, was one Mr. Robert Roode. That's right, he's still glorious. But my goodness, he's not just glorious now, he's got a glorious moustache to go with it. So literally, Joey Ryan was put to shame, wasn't he? Let's be honest there. Did you kind of get a vibe that this is almost like a throwback to a ravishing Rick Rude when you saw this character?
Yeah, he's definitely got the look, hasn't he, of Rick Rude. But again, it's just obvious booking for me, and not in a bad way. When he came up from NXT, in NXT, he's a heel. He comes up and he's a babyface on the main roster. And for me, I mean, he struggled in my eyes. I know he's big champ since, but I've been waiting for him to turn heel for so long now on the main roster. You know, we talked about it ages ago, him and Chad Gable. I thought that was a heel turn waiting to happen. Yeah. I was adamant because they went through that little phase where Chad Gable kept like either getting in his way or almost got too much in the glorious, you know, taking the limelight from Bobby Roode. And I thought any minute now he's going to turn on him, and they just didn't pull the plug on that one. And I say pull the plug, they did pull the plug on it, but they didn't go with the what I thought would have been obvious booking. But again, fresh start for him. I think he could easily be a top mid-card heel. You know, he could. I mean, if Samoa Joe weren't holding the US title, wherever that goes, you know, when a face takes that belt eventually, Robert Roode, as he now wants to be referred to, again, no problem with that, will be, for me, an ideal candidate to be in that bracket. I don't think he's big enough now to be top, you know, in the mix with you know, Seth or whatever in the Universal title. I don't think he's at that level anymore. I think when he was in TNA, you know, he was at that level and could have quite easily come straight over into that top. But you know, I think when you watched his match this week, it was very old school wrestling. There was a lot of lockups and things like that, and headlocks and things like that. So his matches are always going to be a bit slower pace. Where back in the day, he was TNA's version of Triple H in my eyes. Yeah,
I would agree with that wholeheartedly, and I think a lot of people would say the same. Actually, it was big cheer. I think when Survivor Series a couple of years ago, when those two actually were face to face at I believe between Raw and SmackDown. But I think a lot of points there. 100% agree with there. Bobby Roode, or now Robert Roode, should we say? I wonder if they held off. I wonder if this was something that's been in the plans for a few months now, but because of the idea of this. Maybe not a big match at WrestleMania, maybe just, well, there's not the right time to, you know, you'll get lost in the shuffle quickly as Robert Roode. Maybe they've held it off till now on purpose and thought, we'll just stick it out with Chad Gable for a few months. What do you reckon?
Possibly. I mean, they were in a bit of a funny situation, weren't they, as a tag team? So they still had a bit of a program going on once, you know, Ricochet and Aleister Black came up. They were in a kind of a mixture of losing the belts, wanting to get them back in a rematch, and then that match. So it wasn't that they weren't involved anywhere. I guess their last kind of any form of work together would have been the Battle Royal at Mania. Not that they worked together in that, but you know, that would have been the last time they were in them sort of characters.
Yeah, perhaps indeed. And I must admit, with a lot of points you make there with Robert Roode, that it's not easy to say at the moment, but it will come to me. But I mean, you look at it and say, like, it was almost now similar to the NXT character, like you said, that you've been dying for a heel turn for a long time. And I agree with you. He kind of has struggled almost from minute one on the main roster. I do think that there's not been a point that he's not felt flat to be honest, as a character. So I'm personally fully on board with this. The only question mark you can put on this now is, was Ricochet the right guy to put him over in the first match?
No, because I felt I don't think it's done Ricochet any harm, but the two of them are complete polar opposites now. I say now, it's not like Robert Roode's ever been a high flyer or anything like that. But because, like I said about him slowing the pace down in matches, that's completely against kind of the match that Ricochet is going to be in usually. His pace and his high flying ability and, things like that, his agility are what appeals in his matches. And I felt that it made the match a bit of a dud. But again, I think I tweeted someone about that. Same question, was Ricochet the right person? I don't think it's done Ricochet any harm. They'll probably have another match and Ricochet will win. Yeah. Or it might go, they could have 2 or 3 matches. But they couldn't turn him heel. I think heels have always got to start off strong.
Yeah.
You can't. Otherwise, there's no point. And baby faces are there to be beaten down and then to rise back up. Whereas heels are the ones usually, they start off strong and then they end up, the good beats the bad, so to speak. So for me, it's not bad booking in that respect. I don't think it hurts Ricochet. We're not all thinking, he's been put to the bottom of the queue. So. Yeah, no problems for me.
No, none for me either. I think if it had been last week when it was still Bobby Roode, I would have had perhaps a different opinion about it. But the fact that they've made a change and an effort into making this guy relevant again, he needs a big win. And what a better way than to beat Ricochet, because Ricochet, I don't believe has lost a singles match, or certainly has not lost, I don't think he's been pinned up until this point on the main roster. So, I mean, this gives him a positive start, and you kind of think, right, okay, well, maybe I should take Robert Roode and his moustache a bit more seriously. Because I must have had a bit of a chuckle when I see him come through the curtain first off. But no, I hope that it's going to work out. And like you said, this could lead to a mini program. We'll have to wait and see how it's going to play out. But speaking of programs, we've got certainly a clear indication of from Raw what is going to be the Universal Championship picture. I was quite surprised they've pulled the trigger on this match early, but I am very pleased of how it played out. We had 2 triple threat matches. The 2 winners of those matches faced each other in the main event, which was AJ Styles versus Baron Corbin. The winner of that match was AJ Styles, so at Money in the Bank for the Universal Championship is going to be AJ Styles going for the Universal Championship, and he's going to try and take it off one Seth Rollins, which is apparently a match never been done anywhere before. I certainly haven't seen it anyway, so I haven't looked into detail to see if it's been done on an indie show somewhere, but I'm very much looking forward to this match. It's certainly a dream match. I think it's got 5 stars written all over it. Jay, is it the right time that we got this match?
I mean, it's not a bad time. That's all I will say. It could be a bigger event, but it doesn't mean it will be the last time that we see this match. Usually we can see these sort of matches happen 2 or 3 times to finish off the trilogy, so to speak. So it could lead up until SummerSlam. We don't know, but I much like you, I actually, when the matches were announced at the start of the night, I thought it'd be Drew McIntyre. I thought he would be the one, because I think they've been doing some matches between Seth and Drew on house shows, which usually is a bit of a kind of warm up to where it's leading.
Yeah.
But this could be because of the figures that WWE have recently announced. I think only this week they've announced that the figures have dropped on viewing and things like that. So they could be looking to have a big draw early start of the year and then hope to build from there. But these are the matches that us as fans want to see. Yeah. So why make us watch? I wouldn't mind seeing that match 3 times. As long as they don't do it every weekly Raw or SmackDown, whoever's fighting, and then on a pay-per-view. But these 2 is interesting because we got two faces again, and usually, we've seen it before when we had AJ and Nakamura, and they were both faces, and it was the dream match, and you were just thinking, where does the crowd side? And then Nakamura went and turned heel. So yeah. I mean, I'd love to see AJ turn heel again. I think he's an awesome heel, and I thought he was really good when he was heel before on SmackDown. So potentially it could go down that way. I don't think Seth's quite ready to go back to a heel yet. I think he's kind of carrying the flag a bit at the moment for WWE.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Seth, looking at him, he's probably the most over as a face he's been since when he should have been face when he come back from his injury. I think that would have been, it took him nearly 2 years to get back to that momentum. So, no, I'm very pleased for Seth at the moment. He's doing very well. And I say if one has to turn heel, AJ, it would kind of feel the right time for AJ. But then at the same time, I look at it and feel that in WWE, they're probably... the face to heel ratio on Raw, there's quite a lot of heels, so I don't know if there will be a heel turn from this. I'm more kind of leaning towards the idea that the reason this is being done now, I'm wondering if we're going to get an early cash in from a Money in the Bank winner. Whether it'll be the same night, I don't know. I think perhaps maybe that could be more likely for the women at the moment, but we're going to go more into the Money in the Bank card very shortly. But looking at this, maybe Drew McIntyre is going to cash in and Drew McIntyre will perhaps become a champion. That's my current pick for the Money in the Bank anyway, is for it to be Drew. And would that make sense to you then that's why this match would be now, because maybe McIntyre's going to get a run with the belt for a little bit this year?
Potentially. I honestly think we might see the belt change hands. Well, it can only be more than Brock, because Brock seems to hold it all the time. So I think it will be a hell of a lot better for WWE on the whole if that belt is more active and more in the limelight, because it's your top tier belt. You know, that belt was brought in on the Raw side to be the biggest one. You know, it's the Universal Championship. So if Drew was to win it, I might question, well, Seth hasn't held it that long, but that's what Money in the Bank's all about. And we haven't really seen a good Money in the Bank cash in, I wouldn't say, for quite a while. So to have one that quickly from the men's side as well, I wouldn't be against it happening on the same night. You know, we've seen it before. And I think Drew's a good shout. I mean, like you say, we'll go on to it a bit later. But I think Drew's still a good shout. And that again can set up, you know, him and Seth, him and AJ, they're all there in the mix. They're all that top level. It's good.
Yeah, I think it does make sense. And I think you made a great point there with the championship. It needs to be a focal point on the program now. It can't keep being somewhere that's not on television. And maybe it doesn't hurt to have a cut. I mean, what's your feelings on title reigns? I mean, you're saying that maybe that the championship should be a bit more active, maybe change hands a little bit more, just to give it a bit more of a noteworthy feel. How long do you think a champion should roughly hold a belt?
2 or 3 pay-per-views, maybe, tops, I'd say. You know, you need to keep it fresh. I think we don't want it to be a hot potato, and we've seen that with some belts, where it's chopping and changing on a 2 weekly basis. You know, we don't need that. We've seen the US title go for a bit of that recently when it was on SmackDown. But yeah, I mean, when you think about kind of UFC, boxing to some level, I mean, the matches are a lot more spaced out on boxing. But with UFC and things like that, you know, people don't hold the belts for as long as what you think. You know, it's 2 or 3 fights, and then all of a sudden it's a new champ. You know, and it's the unpredictability. It doesn't have to be because you're the top guy, or you know, if it was that way, then Roman would still be champ. You know what I mean? So I don't think it does any harm. You have to create a history with a belt, and if it's just got 1 or 2 people who have held it, it's pretty boring. You know, and we know it's not. We know it's all planned, so it doesn't do any harm to a wrestler's profile to hold that belt for a period of time. Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned on Twitter this week about Jinder Mahal. You know, no one was really a fan when he had that WWE title.
No.
But really, it done his career wonders because it got him huge, you know, and not just that, it attracted a huge market in India. So, you know, really, you know, we don't look back and go, wow, what a champion he was. But we look back and we go, he actually made quite a big impact for the company and for his own profile. So having it shared around, you know, Seth's championship material all day long. You know, he's one of the best wrestlers in business at the moment. But he doesn't need that belt to be the best. Do you know what I mean?
Do you think? Sorry, you go on.
No, so just to reiterate, Not enough. But we moan that people don't get given the chance a lot to be at that top level, and if they don't hold it for that long, then there's a lot more chance of people, new challengers. Again, it doesn't mean you have to put all your eggs in one basket and go, he's the guy who's going to hold this belt for 12 months until the next Mania.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with a lot of that. I think that I'm of the feeling maybe 4 months is probably a good length of time for a champion, or 5 months. Sometimes I don't mind them being long reigns, but like you say, it's keeping an idea fresh. I mean, CM Punk, when he was champion, I mentioned that name, by the way, when he was there for 434 days, I mean, he turned heel halfway through, and that's what made that remain interesting. You could argue that when AJ Styles was champion, he was faced the whole way through, and it did get to a stage where we kind of thought, this is the show, we need to lose it, because it was getting maybe a little bit boring. We only kind of kept with it and kept patient with it because we kind of thought he was going to beat that CM Punk record, which, of course, arguably you could say Brock Lesnar is the guy that did that, and Pete Dunne did that, but with different championships. But hey, I'm sure there'll be a WWE champion that will probably hold that one day, but we'll have to wait and see in the future. But a question that I would say to you is that with Seth Rollins there as the champion, I mean, like you said, that he's championship material all day long. But when these guys win the champion, and Kofi Kingston comes into this category as well, is that is it a bit more fun to watch them chase the championship than actually hold the championship?
From an underdog perspective, yes. Kofi definitely. I mean, Seth was an underdog. I mean, if we talk about it from a real perspective, Seth versus Brock he's a massive underdog. The size of Brock, and what an absolute beast he is. But from an underdog perspective, yes, it's good to see the chase, and will they get there? I think the problem with WWE is, and we've seen it all the time, well, several times, is that the fans can get behind someone, and then all of a sudden WWE don't really go for it. And this has probably been the first time I've seen it in a very long time with Kofi, where they've gone, oh, let's do this, let's get behind him. Because I would never, if you'd said to me 6 months ago, WrestleMania, Kofi's going to win the belt, I would have gone, no chance.
No.
I don't think anyone would have. But he got that opportunity, albeit through Mustafa Ali's injury. Again, that wouldn't have happened if he hadn't had that injury. It was unlikely it was ever going to happen. But again, going back to my original point about more people holding the belts, that's a moment now. That's a WrestleMania moment. Kofi wins the belt, and it doesn't have to be at Mania. You can have. We've seen it before. Daniel Bryan winning the belt back in the day, when the first time he won the belt was a moment. Sheamus probably wasn't a top level guy at the time when he won the belt. There's been loads of people who've done it, but I think now that the title is off of Brock, there's more opportunity for people who want to stake a claim to be the next top level guy, because until you get past that ceiling that is Brock Lesnar usually, and to some extent Roman Reigns, but they're never going to get that opportunity, because I mean, we saw Brock have matches against all the top guys last year, AJ, Finn Balor, Daniel Bryan, and he squashed them all. They were awesome matches.
They were.
But he squashed them all, and Seth had to beat him at Mania, and now it's given the belt and that kind of top division for Raw the opportunity to shine.
Yeah, I would completely agree, and it really just feels fresh that the championship's on Raw. We've got new superstars challenging on Raw. The idea of Money in the Bank coming as well does always add that little bit of extra intrigue as well. So, I mean, I think the top end of Raw is looking quite exciting. I mean, the fact is as well, we didn't even have Braun Strowman on the show on Raw this week, and he's a candidate who could be going for the championship at somewhere down the line, and especially if McIntyre was to hold the belt as well. It does kind of feel for me that right now, to have a fresh programming on WWE, that Seth probably shouldn't be a long-term champion. I think McIntyre would be a good shout. But are there other people on Raw that you would say would be a good shout for Money in the Bank?
Well, I think all the people involved in the two triple threats definitely are options. I mean, when you think about the Miz, I mean, I don't particularly want to see him in the US title picture at the moment. I think he could easily be putting himself back in. I think there's the right mix on Raw actually for him to be a good candidate in the top Universal title picture somewhere down the line, and especially Money in the Bank. I mean, he's held it before, hasn't he? Money in the Bank.
He has, yes, 2010.
Yeah,
he held it.
Yeah, so I mean, he's an awesome guy as well. I think his character again. I mean, he's turned kind of face at the moment, but he's another one, a bit like KO, which I'm sure we'll go on to later, who could easily at any moment turn back heel, and you wouldn't be surprised. You never know with The Miz, so that's what I like about him. Just trying to think who else was in the triple threat matches just off the top of my head.
We've got Rey Mysterio, Samoa Joe in the first two. We had Baron Corbin as well in the second one. Trying to think, obviously The Miz was the other candidate there, but we mentioned that Bobby Lashley hasn't moved over either as of yet. I say as of yet because there are rumours that the Superstar Shake-Up is set to continue next week as well. I'll give you those names quickly. I know we're kind of breaking topic a little bit here, but we're expecting for Monday Night Raw, Nikki Cross will be confirmed for Raw next week. Killian Dane is expected to make a jump to Raw. So, I mean, could we have like a sanity reunion here almost, but just without Alexandra Wolf?
I think they're going to push him in the singles. I'm surprised actually with Killian Dane. I had a feeling he might go back to NXT UK and have a crack at that, because they could do with people of his kind of profile. I think because he was huge when he came into WWE from the Indies. But again, I think the thing with him and Nikki, they're in a relationship, either partners or married, I don't know. So that wherever one of them goes, I think both of them will go anyway. But I think for the benefit of them too, it'd be better for them to have kind of singles pushes somewhere down the line. Unfortunately for Killian Dane, which is strange for someone of his size, I think he will be a bit of a jobber to start with.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same. I feel he could be a bit lost in the shuffle, but you never know. I mean, maybe they might fix him up in a new team. Maybe just him and Nikki will be partnered up. Maybe we'll have to wait and see. I mean, maybe, you know, we've mentioned about Bray Wyatt earlier. Maybe these are sort of candidates that could be in the stable. We'll have to wait and see. But on to SmackDown Live, and expected. You predicted this actually a couple of weeks ago. The B team, go to Blue Brand. So. I mean, that seems to be nailed on. We're mentioning Bray Wyatt a lot on this episode, but I mean, maybe that's because of the fact that Bray has been so heavily publicised this week with that gimmick change. But if there was to be like a new stable that was built from this, is it a bit of a disappointment? Or, I mean, if Bray was to end up on SmackDown, for example, I mean, is there a potential Bo could maybe turn and be a part of this family?
I think we've all wanted that for ages, because Bo Dallas in NXT was awesome. Wasn't he just before he came up? He was NXT champ, wasn't he?
He was the third NXT champion, yes, with his Bo Leave character.
Yeah, and he was really good in that. And I think we've seen a few times where there's been little hints that something might happen on the main roster. But I think because of the whole Wyatt family scenario, Bo was doing his own stuff with the Bo Leave stuff. I think it's too far gone down the line. I think unless the B team were completely off TV for a long time, a good period of time, and then he came back separate, that would be the only way. But not as they are at the moment.
No, perhaps not. It's very interesting because I can't remember where I saw this, but I did look on Twitter and someone suggested that the Bray Wyatt character, this is what they should have done with Bo years ago with that positive Bo Leave character, and they should have given him that twisted side back then. But I'm sure they wouldn't have linked all the buzzards and stuff in with it, so I don't quite know if that fully would make sense. But it certainly would have been interesting to see, that positiveness crack in that kind of way. But we'll move back on anyway because we've done the shake-up there. But I mean, there were some shake-ups this week on Raw and SmackDown. And one that really surprised a lot of people was Cesaro. Now, you predicted that you would split the bar up on the shake-up when we did the predictions. Well, I mean, Cesaro was on Raw. He had the bar's music. He still had the same We Are the Bar kind of thing. But there was no Sheamus. And on the opening video package, it was just Cesaro. No Sheamus featured in it at all. And there was even question marks. What will happen when Sheamus comes back from Michael Cole? So, are the bar finished? Or is it just simply because Sheamus is out with an injury at the moment, they've decided to just push Cesaro on his own?
I think it's probably what you just said. I think they're probably thinking we can't just let him sit there and do nothing while Sheamus is injured. So let's give him a little run. That match for me, he fought Cedric Alexander, didn't he?
Yes.
It was. I think that was a difficult match to put Cedric Alexander in because I know we're talking about faces and heels, but if you're debuting on the main roster, a bit like we're saying. No, we're not saying because Robert Roode was debuting a new gimmick. I guess that can be the only way we kind of confirm that one had to be that he won. For Cesaro, it wouldn't have. I don't think it would have hurt Cesaro for him to lose that match because he's already a heel. It's not like he's changed his gimmick. It's just that he hasn't got his partner. He's not. He's in singles action. I don't think it would have hurt him. Cedric Alexander felt like he got buried a little bit straight off the bat. Don't know how that's going to affect him long term. Are we going to see a mini program between them two now for a bit? I don't think the match was that great, to be honest. I know you thought it was pretty decent. I felt it was a bit sluggish in places, and the crowd maybe didn't get behind Alexander as much as WWE probably thought they might. But it'd be interesting to see. But going back to your original point, I think it's a good opportunity for Cesaro because he's always been listed as or it's been mentioned that pound for pound one of the strongest guys on the roster and technically very good. I think it was always his promo work that needed a lot of work on. But I think he's a lot better with that now as well. So he's definitely got potential. I don't know if I could see him at the very top end of the card just yet.
No. I kind of agree, but I would like to see some movement that way because he's certainly he's someone in the company who's definitely worked himself up a position. And I mean, if you look at it like Kofi, I mean, he's been there a long time. I think he's been in WWE now on the main roster. He's been there for about 7 years now, if I'm not mistaken, around that sort of length of time. So, I mean, perhaps maybe he's only a couple of years away from maybe trying to break through himself. So we'll have to wait and see how that will play out. But we'll move then on to SmackDown Live, I think, now, because we seem to have gone into a shake-up way. We can come back to Money in the Bank later on. But we look, I mean, some of this has Money in the Bank implications as well. But first, if we look at the other stars of the shake-up that moved to SmackDown, Aleister Black, Andrade, and Zelina Vega. Now, there's multiple different sources and reports going around suggesting why the reasonings for this are. If you're to believe one report that's been going around doing the rounds on the dirt sheets, including Ringside News, that Charlotte has used her pulling power to bring Andrade over to SmackDown Live because they are newly engaged, apparently, although that has been denied since as well. And if that's the case, well then Andrade would need Zelina Vega, his business manager, and Vega is also married to Aleister Black, so they want to keep the married couples, so this is what broke up Black and Ricochet. I suppose they didn't want to bring half of the roster with them, bringing Ricochet as well, but certainly was of some interest there. But there is another report going around that apparently Fox News wanted a big Hispanic star, which is why they've moved over Andrade back. I felt that Andrade was the only superstar that moved this week, that there was a bit of a purpose for it, because they at least said that he wanted the Intercontinental Championship after he had beaten Finn Balor last week. That felt like it made sense. Did the rest of the moves, I mean, Jinder Mahal also moved over from Raw to SmackDown with the Singh brothers. Did those moves just seem a little bit odd since the shake-up was last week?
Well, the way they got themselves out of it was just by saying that the shake-ups would continue throughout the week, so it was just like, that's the way we get around it, There was no mention, going on the same topic, there was no mention about Samoa Joe. No, no. He was just there. Oh, US title holders here. There was a few instances like that. But like you say, the one with Andrade, I think that was well put together with the fact that he beat Finn Balor on Raw the week before.
Definitely. Did you enjoy the rematch between Finn and Andrade on SmackDown?
Yeah, I think they've got good chemistry to get them to. Andrade seems to be really. I want to say improving, but I thought he was decent in NXT. So, but he's having really good matches. Like the program that he done with Rey Mysterio was awesome. The US title matches that he had were all relatively good. You know, he was involved in that picture for a little bit. So I don't see him. I don't see there being many superstars that he could fight where he'd have an average match. Do you know what I mean, or a poor match? So him and Finn. I mean, Finn's always top draw, I think, in his matches. So it speaks volumes really when them two get into the ring together. And I like the element that Zelina Vega comes into it. I thought last week's one on Raw where she hit Finn with a Hurricane Rana off the apron was better than this week's one where she just dived in off. I mean, this is one of the only things that frustrates me in WWE sometimes. It's like how obvious. Like, why is the ref not disqualifying? Like, why is she getting? If she's getting involved and the refs clearly can see what's going on, why is that not an automatic DQ? She ain't up there just to get a better view of the match. Do you know what I mean? So it was, that's a little bit silly. Whereas on Raw, she done it while the ref's back was turned. It's funny how Finn's all of a sudden on the floor, but there's the believability is a little bit better to take him.
No, completely agree with all of that there. Certainly do. But I think we go back to match quality there, and I think there is a lot of there was a lot of good matches on SmackDown this week. We see Bayley and Charlotte. I think they had probably the longest segment of the show, and they had quite a stellar match as well. Do you think that there seems to be a renewed belief in Bayley since she's made the move to SmackDown Live? I'm quite enjoying her on the blue brand.
Yeah, definitely, and there seems to be a bit of an edge about her as well, which I like. I think she just got a bit too comfortable on Raw with the women's tag division. Obviously, it was historic for this current era of women's wrestling that her and Sasha Banks won the belts. But now, I mean, I do question where she would be in the picture if Sasha was still about at the moment. We still don't know where that's heading. There's been loads of reports on that, but with what she's doing, I like it. I think, potentially to have, even depending on what happens with the SmackDown title, if Charlotte wins it at Money in the Bank, and Becky then stays on Raw because she's got the Raw belt, then there's a ready-made feud to go between Charlotte and Bayley there.
Yeah, definitely. We'll have to wait and see how that's going to play out. But I kind of agree with a lot of the comments you made then. Sasha Banks is a very key topic this week. Again, lots of conflicting reports. I believe it's... I can't remember now if it's... I want to say Ben Shepherd, but he's a presenter. But certainly Shepherd is in the name. The Oh You Didn't Know podcast, I believe it is. He's come out to say that he believes that Sasha Banks has signed a contract extension, and that when she returns, she'll be going to the blue brand of SmackDown Live. There's too much heat with her and a lot of the Raw talents at the minute, hoping to have her back before Money in the Bank. Now, I've seen conflicting reports on RingsideNews.com today saying that WWE are happy for Sasha Banks to sit out the remainder of her contract and are even happy to freeze the contract so that she more or less doesn't compete again, which would make... either side, I mean, for me, makes is kind of understandable in a way. It seems to be a lot of heat here with Sasha and the company. It's just on which side you believe. If Sasha was to come back, we're going to go now on the optimism, because I'm hopeful she will come back. And I think that SmackDown would be a better home for her. Obviously, there is a lot of backstage rumours that there is a not nice feeling between her and Alexa Bliss that would separate the two of them. Or do you think that Sasha... I mean, I think she needs a fresh start, and I think that SmackDown Live would be that kind of breath of fresh air for her.
Definitely. And she's too talented, really, to let her go, because AEW will snap her up straight away if she is released. They need to sort things out with her. If it is that she's signed a contract extension, she'll be back soon, then I could see her being the one to win Money in the Bank. She hasn't won that before, has she? I don't think.
No, she has not.
So that I think that'd be a good platform. I'd like to see her come back as a heel. I think her heel gimmick is a lot better than when she's a babyface. I hope it does get sorted soon, and that things can be patched up, and that she is back soon.
Yeah, I would like that as well. It certainly would be more of a breath of fresh air for the product to see another face on a different brand. I think the match types there. Long time since we've seen Sasha and Charlotte, but even if we got a heel Sasha Banks, that's what I'm crying out for. I'd love to see Sasha, against the likes of perhaps maybe that program with Bailey at last, or maybe we could even see against the likes of Oscar. I think that would be an interesting program to see the two of them against each other. We could even get perhaps even Bailey and Sasha make a little, reunion. And we've got them. We've got the Oscar and Kairi Sane team. We've got the Iconics. I mean, we've got Fire and Desire of Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville. So there would be a number of teams on SmackDown Live to actually make a division within a single brand, which would be very interesting as well. And I mean, a lot of people are wondering what the role of Liv Morgan is going to be. Of course, she is also moved to SmackDown Live. And I mean, talking about the Riot Squad quickly, I mean, there are a little rumour going around this week. Now, I don't know how true it's going to be, but her and Carmella have taken the same vacation at the same time. And of course, are from similar places as well in the States. I mean, would it be weird to take Liv Morgan from one team and throw her into another one?
Yeah, for me it would, but I mean, especially with there being a fair few teams at the moment on SmackDown Live. We've had where the tag champs have got, like the Iconics were out, and there was a few different teams. So I don't think it'd be the right time for them to be teaming up with and setting up new teams just yet.
No, I agree with that entirely. We'll move on to the big part of SmackDown Live then, before we go on to like the Money in Bank matches that have been made. We're going to talk about the main event angle, which I'm sure will lead to a championship match at Money in the Bank. Is the heel turn from Kevin Owens turning on the New Day. It only took 7 days. Many people thought it was going to happen the first week. I'm sure quite a few were not surprised it happened the second week. There seemed to be quite a few fans, though, surprised on Twitter that heel turn took place. But, I mean, for me, it felt obvious from minute one that Kevin Owens here was not doing this for a friendship.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what I would say is we forget probably that KO has been playing that kind of face sort of gimmick for a good few weeks now. Before Mania, I think he was backing Kofi to be in the title match, and all of that. So although it seems quick, I think it's more the fact that he's been Big O or whatever he referred to himself as part of the New Day in place of Big E. But we all knew it was going to come. I was surprised it happened this particular week. I wouldn't have been as surprised if it happened, say, next week. And I wouldn't have been surprised if it happened, like you said, last week on when he initially joined the New Day. I feel like 1 week isn't really enough time, especially on SmackDown as well, where they're shorter shows. I think they could have easily extended that for another week at least. But I think I was reading a report on Ringside News that the reason why they done it this quick is because they didn't want Kofi kind of twiddling his thumbs on a weekly basis. They wanted to get him in a program kind of early doors. Otherwise, there wasn't really a lot for him to do. So I think it's the right time. I think KO's a great first kind of rival for him to have as well.
Yeah, definitely. It certainly does throw a lot of interest as well because of what's going to happen. I mean, of course, Big O, if we want to call him that. I mean, did you enjoy those segments? Just quickly before I go any further with him and the New Day.
There was a humorous element to it. Yeah, I think KO's he is a funny guy. You've got to remember the stuff that he done with Jericho and their stuff, the funny stuff that they done. But seeing him as a member of the New Day, it's a bit like seeing. I'm pretty sure if you saw any other character, if you saw Baron Corbin in the New Day, you'd have to laugh about it. Do you know what I mean? And
yeah,
I think they get that gimmick over so well and so stupidly funny that any other character in it is going to look a little bit strange. But KO kind of took it on board. He'd done the Big E kind of vocals before the introduction and all that. So he was fully on board with it and done it really well.
Yeah, I would agree. He did do it very well. There was certainly an element of justice to it. But I mean, looking at this, I mean, I agree with you. Kofi Kingston needed a program now. It's interesting as well because Kevin Owens has just had a bit of a stop-start kind of feeling since coming back. It felt like they were going to put him into a WrestleMania program with Daniel Bryan, but of course it was moved for Kofi. He was given the Stunner, which was a very heavily babyface finishing move. So it felt like they were all in with this babyface Kevin Owens, this kind of, average guy who eats junk food but still is a tough guy, But like you said, they've had to move quickly to make sure Kofi has got a program, and it feels like a good program to put Kofi in. Like you say, KO has got some credibility. I'm going to throw an early prediction out right now because we're still a few weeks away, but I don't know the extent of Big E's injuries, but I'm going to throw a suggestion that Big E is going to return at Money in the Bank, and I think he's going to cost Kofi the championship, and I think KO is going to be the guy to win it because, let's be honest, it's not going to be forever before Roman Reigns gets that championship match, and I think the wrong guy for him to take the belt off is Kofi Kingston, because you're going to get the place completely. He's going to be booed out of the arena. It's going to be back to square one. He needs to beat a heel, someone that they don't mind him winning the belt off of. And I'm not saying KO is that guy because fans still really like KO, but certainly would be better than this element of Kofi Kingston and the resurgence of his career that he's having right now. So as well, it would make perfect for Big E to get that heat if they're going to do that New Day program because ironically, Xavier Woods was powerbombed on the side apron this week, which would suggest that if Big E is injured, Xavier Woods might now have been taken out. Kofi is on his own. And this is what makes that kind of program almost interesting as well because, Kofi's been part of this team for years and now he's the WWE champion, but he's not got his backup either. He needed his backup to get to the WrestleMania match. So how is he going to cope on his own? So I feel there's a real interesting element and a twist to this storyline with the heel turn, even though it's come out at such an early stage. Does it have that compelling feel to you as it does for me?
What I would ask, Steve, if I throw it back to you, is what would Big E's motive be?
Right, well, my motive for Big E would be simply that, he's gone out injured. Instead of looking out for Big E and his best well wishes to get back very soon, he's been replaced very quickly. Within the first week, I remember, no one should be able to replace me. And ironically, the parts that they got, KO to do, or Big O for this, was the stuff that Big E does. So all the pancake eating preparation before the match, not that we've seen that so much. We see the announcements to the ring, we see all of that. And I just kind of feel like Kevin Owens has played the Big E role, and it kind of almost feels like that he is replaceable. And Big E is not replaceable, I'm sure, in his eyes. So it just, for me, just kind of, there is an open door should they want to take that heel turn.
So would you see it that Big E costs Kofi the belt? It doesn't necessarily set up a partnership between KO and Big E. It's purely then setting up, if anything, what that would do is then take Kofi out of the title picture with KO if he wins the belt. And then it sets up a feud between the New Day, at least two of the members. We don't know where Xavier would fit in that. But then it will allow, say, Roman to go for the belt against KO.
It's exactly the thought process, really, because you need to get Kofi out of that championship picture in a safe kind of way without fans really, hurting on the product. And there's no automatic rematch clauses now either. And, the best you might get is that Kofi would have his injustice that he never got his rematch, which you could come back to in 6 months' time. Finn Balor had that go on for about a year and a half. You could do things like that, or you could have simply that he gets his opportunity where he could go for it again, and Big E costs him a second time. Like you say, there's no real friendship here from Kevin Owens and Big E. It's simply the fact that Big E wants to make that statement and that he feels that, you've forgotten about me. Well, I'm the most important member of the New Day and I'm the one that should be the breakout star and I'm the one that should be the champion. And, you've got all these different roads I suppose you could go down with it. Now, of course, it might not happen. It probably likelihood we'd imagine it's not going to happen. WWE merchandise sales with the New Day is very big. And perhaps you could argue that that Kofi Kingston should win his first matches as WWE champion. There is some more shows before SummerSlam, which I believe is probably the destination where Roman would probably win the championship. I think it would be a mistake as well for Roman to win the belt so soon as well. Yeah. So I think that would be the clever way to do it. But of course, we don't always have the same faith in the writing team from WWE. But that's kind of my imagination of how I would book it. I don't know if how that would play out for your viewing on WTV every week.
Yeah, do you know what? There's been some talk about certainly the first two shows of SmackDown in this since Mania, how there has been that freshness, and I don't know if that's to do with different writers or producers or whatever, but they certainly seem to be taking it in a better direction, I think. And SmackDown for me was probably a better show, even prior to all of last calendar wrestling year. For me, was the better show of the two as well. So with what they're doing, I think what you're saying makes complete sense with Kofi if they go down that route, and it keeps him, like you say, it keeps whoever his opponent is from winning. If that's where they want to put Reigns, then like you say, against Kofi is not the right person to do it. So they're better off getting it off of him in a way that's going to keep him and whoever wins the belt safe in that respect.
Certainly. I mean, there could be the question mark as well, should Kevin Owens be WWE champion right now if he'd had his match with Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania? Is this just kind of breaking up the story to what they maybe would have done in the first place?
Potentially, yeah. They could just be coming back around full circle. They might have said to him, look, come back early or come back when you can. You'll be winning the belt at Mania. And then things took a bit of a turn. They may have had to say to him, look, we're going to have to put this on ice. And then it will come round at the next pay-per-view afterwards, but you will get the belt. I think KO's a top guy in WWE. He had such a good year that year with Jericho as well when they had their little partnership going on. That was just amazing, that whole period that they had. But everything comes to an end in that respect, and they had to write that one off at some point. He had a bit of a blip, I would say, a bit of a downward turn in his program, and his career. He had the injury, and he's another one, a bit like we talked about Bray earlier. He come back, he looks in better physical shape. I'm not sure about the stunner for me. I actually like his pop-up powerbomb. I know it's only a powerbomb, but then the same argument could be said for Braun Strowman or Lars Sullivan, who are only doing kind of power slams, really, for their finishers. But the pop-up powerbomb, for me, I like the impact of it. I like the way people could get out of it. It was a good move, and I don't know if the stunner really suits him. For me, Stone Cold, it's a bit like someone else doing the rock bottom now. It just wouldn't make sense to me.
No, or people's elbow, perhaps, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, you got five knuckle shuffle, which is the closest thing to a people's elbow. But did he need the stunner? I don't. Maybe as a face. But I hope he goes back to using the pop-up powerbomb.
To be honest, actually, I think it's a valid point, and I think now he's gone back to a heel. I really enjoyed the pop-up powerbomb. It's my favourite finisher when he debuted with that move. I've always been a big fan of the KO character, and I wouldn't mind seeing it being brought back, to be perfectly honest. Now, I think that especially when it's used on Woods as well, the impact that was used there, it would be interesting to see what KO does for a finisher going forward. But we mentioned Roman Reigns, so let's move on to Roman Reigns. And I see a big tweet there on Twitter this week saying, right, he's going to be taking over SmackDown. Now, you thought there was an agenda on Raw. It's going to be even worse on SmackDown. It was the first segment of the show. He seems to be putting a middle to upper kind of profile match here with Elias. Seems to be linked in with Vince and Shane. For me, it feels like Elias has got a big push since going to SmackDown with this program as well. I think Elias has come out, smelling of roses here. It feels like, though, it's going to be a safe program just to kick things off for Roman on the blue brand. Would you agree?
100%, and I think it's quite clever booking. What you got to remember is, I think me and you predicted that Shane and The Miz would carry on their feud probably up until Money in the Bank and probably finish it off there. I'm pleased that they've kind of just gone, nope, that's it. That was Mania. That was their. Shane had his Mania moment again.
Yeah.
Less of them, please. But I like the fact Reigns hasn't just been put straight in at the top, like we're saying with Kofi. Because that's where we expect him to be. And who's the next best thing to be up against? The authority, the owner, the whoever's in charge of whatever brand show you're on. He's been through this all before on Raw. Don't forget, with Hunter and Stephanie and fighting against the authority. So it's to me, it's clever booking. It's the same booking but fresh because it's against different people. So and adding a lot to the mix again, like you said, that doesn't do his profile any harm.
No, doesn't at all. I actually think as well, it could be interesting because the Saudi Arabia show looks to be set for, I believe it's early to mid-June. And so, I mean, perhaps we could be getting a Roman Shane program in there. And I like the idea that you said that they have kind of just moved on from the Shane and Miz program. And I mean, the face doesn't always have to come out on top. And I like that. They've just gone, right, yeah, like you say, they've moved on. We've done the match. We did a big spot. You remember it. We're not going to top it, so let's just quietly move on. Miz kind of got his revenge with a couple of punches on Raw when he moved in the shake-up. So that's it. It's a solid finish to a storyline. So I think that all of that there you say makes a lot of sense, and I think slowly Roman is going to get to the top of the card. But I mean, they're right. It's clever booking to just take your time. There's no rush here. We're taking baby steps with Roman, and we're trying to be delicate and not get him booed like he was before. And I'm sure when he gets back to the top, some people are going to go back to boo. It's a natural thing with Roman. Everyone's always going to feel that there's this like feeling of it being forced down people's throats. But I, for one, I will be more on board than I have been previously with a Roman on top of the card with the WWE Championship. He's not been WWE Champion for a long time, mainly as well because he's been on different shows as the belt. And I think as well, he is a credible champion. He is someone that adds credibility to the top of the card. And I mean, you could argue that some superstars don't when they hold the championship. I mean, we mentioned there with perhaps Jinder Mahal was not really the most exciting champion we've had in previous history, but I mean Roman kind of does have that aura about him, and the people, there is that love-hate relationship with him, and this is why he does have that where he should be at the top of the card.
I completely agree, and just off the top of my head, if you think about I think the big issues he had when he was on Raw is because of some of the other wrestlers that were around him from a face side. There was all the fans were behind Braun. They wanted Strowman as champ. All the fans were behind Seth. They wanted Seth as champ. Yeah, at least on SmackDown. I'm not saying there's other wrestlers on there that they wouldn't want as champ, but if for example it went down the route that you're saying, he's got a ready-made feud there with KO for a few weeks. A few months potentially. Then you look at Daniel Bryan's got to come back at some point. Daniel Bryan, for me, if his injury's not as bad and can be back sooner, he wouldn't be a bad shout for if they wanted to take Money in the Bank briefcase onto the blue brand. I think he would be an awesome Money in the Bank holder again. He has held that before, hasn't he?
He has, yeah. Again, I believe it's from 2011. He was the winner for the SmackDown brand. So,
Daniel Bryan's got to come back at some point. Him versus Roman, great feud in my eyes. I think that would be really interesting. Don't forget, you've also got there as well, which I think would be longer term, Lars Sullivan versus Roman. I mean, that, to me, I think what we've got to remember now, Roman's one of the vets really now. He's one of the top guys, and he's been around for a while. He's got to almost do that John Cena job of trying to put other people over, these up-and-comers now. So Lars Sullivan, wow, what a match that would be between him and Roman. That'd be good.
Two heavy hitters.
Say that again, sorry.
Two heavy hitters.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And I mean, the impact, I think what they're doing with Lars is clever. It's slow building and just destroying everything in sight. That's where it's going to lead to. He's not going to be mid-card guy. Vince will want him up the top end. So, and I think the difference where he will succeed as opposed to where Braun hasn't is because Braun got over. The crowd were on side, and to have a monster face the two don't combine that well, I don't think. Yeah. Whereas if you've got a freak heel, that's to Vince, that's exactly what he wants, and then to someone to rise up and defeat the heel at the end of the day. And don't forget the other person potentially down the line from a face side as well. We've also got Finn Balor on the blue brand as well. Now I know he's IC title holder at the moment, but he's bigger than IC title really. I think he was the first Universal champ, so he's got to be up there at some point. So I think there's loads of potential on SmackDown now. It makes it really interesting.
Yeah, it certainly does. There's a very open field. It feels like a couple of, like I say, veterans, and then a lot of potential. And it's to see what which of that potential, which has got the cream that rises to the top, as they say? Which one's gonna head to the top of the card? So very interesting with that. I mean, like we said, we've got the Roman versus Elias match there. Set for the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. And of course, we haven't really mentioned Becky Lynch, the man. She's doing double duty then for Money in the Bank, so we might as well finish off the Money in the Bank matches. She is going to be taking on Lacey Evans for the Raw Women's Championship, and then Charlotte, after Charlotte beat Bayley on SmackDown, for the SmackDown Women's Championship. Now, this is going to be very interesting. A lot of different theories with this. How are they going to get out of this? Is it going to become from Becky 2 belts to Becky no belts? Is she gonna beat both of the talents, or is it gonna be a DQ, or could we even get a situation where Becky 2 belts keeps Becky 2 belts, but she gets cashed in on for a third match of Money in the Bank? There's lots of different avenues this can go down. How do you see this playing out, Jay?
Do you know what? I honestly don't know where they're going to go with this. I think it's too soon for Lacey to win a belt. When I say it's too soon, she has been around for ages. She's just done a lot of walkouts. But we've not, other than the Royal Rumble, we've not really seen her properly in the ring yet. I mean, she had a decent match, didn't she, a couple of weeks ago? But I think it might be a little bit too soon for Lacey. So I can potentially see Becky winning at least the Raw title. Charlotte, there could be that revenge. She didn't get pinned at Mania. Not sure, mate. Not sure. What are your views?
It's hard to say, but because I fear someone could get buried if Becky retains both belts. It does give a lack of credibility to at least one female star, preferably more likely the one that wrestles second. My feeling is that it would be good if Lacey Evans was to go on first. That way, I agree, she's too soon. So I would say that she would perhaps lose here, and it would be okay. But if Charlotte was to lose, then I suppose it doesn't harm Charlotte as badly, but it doesn't make that second competitor look good. If Lacey's the second match, it really harms her. I am of belief that maybe she wins the first match, probably against Lacey. I reckon it could be a DQ, similar finish with Charlotte. Therefore, maybe we could see a similar thing to like Survivor Series with Ronda Rousey. And then I think a cash-in could happen if a SmackDown superstar happens to win the Money in the Bank briefcase. Jay, we're gonna try and wrap this up very shortly. So before we do, I mean, we mentioned the men's Money in the Bank earlier, but women's, who do we see walking away with that briefcase?
I don't know why, but I've just got this feeling that Mandy Rose is going to win it. I mean, I tipped her to be a strong candidate for the Rumble as well. So, I mean, I think she's come on a lot further over the last 6 to 9 months. So, there seems to be a lot of hype around her as well from a commentary perspective. They're trying to get her over all the time. So, it's going to happen at some point, whether this is too soon. But I don't think she'd be a bad shout to have the briefcase, not necessarily cash in straight away. But I quite like the unpredictability about when she might do it.
Yeah, certainly would have some interest about it. Early suspicion. I mean, if Sasha came back, like you say, I think it would be a great shout for her to do it. I think Bayley would be a good shout if the rumours of a heel turn are true. I mean, that would be a good way to do it for her. Definitely the cash in on Becky. That would be interesting. So there's a lot of different avenues that could go down. I mean, Mandy Rose, like you say, I mean, a lot of people would not be on board with it, but I personally would. I agree with you. There is an it factor with her. Sonya Deville as well would have an interesting theory if she was to. It's very interesting. I kind of feel that the blue brand is most likely to get the women's briefcase, and I kind of feel that the red of the Raw will get the men's. Would you kind of agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
You do?
Yeah. Well, again with you, I think Drew's going to win the men's. If Daniel Bryan's in the mix, we don't know what's happening with him. I don't think he'd be a bad outside bet for the men's. But Drew's, I think he deserves it. I think he had an awesome year last year, if we count it as 2018. Since he split from Dolph, even when he was with Dolph, but since he split from Dolph and went on his own, he's been awesome.
Yeah, I think the time is there. Well, that's all from us anyway. I think we've covered all the bases there. Is there anything else you'd like to bring up, Jay, before we close it off?
No, great chat, Steve. Hopefully, WWE continues to improve and keep following on with this trend that they're going on at the moment with good product.
Yeah, let's hope so indeed. Very interesting indeed. If it's the first time you're watching here, the SCW The Wrestling Channel on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, amongst others, Pocket Casts. There's quite a number of them, which I will leave in the description. If you want to like or follow any of those pages, please do, and spread the word of SCW. James, you're doing another show as well, aren't you, in podcast form? If you'd like to share that with everyone, if they want to check it out.
Yeah, I do one on a weekly basis called This Week in Metropolis. That's me and King Porteous talking about news topics from over the past week. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah, definitely give them a follow and yeah, follow us up. We'll put the link in the description in the YouTube video, and you can go and click on that and follow and give a listen onto that as well if you fancy giving that a check out also. But thank you very much for everyone that has been listening, from watching. We've been listening to the sound from James and for myself, Steve. It's been great having you guys on board as always. Do spread the word of SCW, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care. Thank you for watching, and take care. Enjoy your WWE week.